Hi guys, welcome back to the Big Sew Along. I'm Ginny, and as always, I thank you very much for choosing to spend some time with me. Today we are talking about skirts, but as seems to be the case lately, I have a little follow-up on last week's video. I showed you this dress, the Noah dress from Trama Patterns that I made. My original inspiration for this dress was this right here. And I was saying that I didn't want to do the double layer because in the description of this dress online, the one that's ready to wear, it's like a double layer. So there's a second layer that holds that. And I was like, that's too messy, too much. So Anne and Ed both commented on my video last week and said why I didn't just make that second layer a separate like skirt. And I thought, I have no idea why I didn't think of that. Like, that is the easiest, most reasonable solution. I absolutely can do that. So, in the fabric that I showed you guys last week, that is what I'm going to, if I have enough, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make the Noah dress in that fabric and then make a matching skirt to go under it. So, we will see how that turns out. But that brings us to our topic of today, which is skirts. And when we were talking a few weeks ago about my most worn me-mades, several of you commented that I didn't have any skirts. And I have some thoughts about skirts. The first one is, I've always worn like pretty straight up and down skirts because my body is pretty straight up and down. I don't have a lot of, curves. And while like a fuller skirt can like add curves, so you just add it to the bottom. I don't know. I think I've always just felt like a little bit unbalanced in a fuller skirt. So for whatever reason, I've always sort of gravitated towards a straighter skirt. The problem with that is I very often, as I am right this minute, sit in a chair cross-legged. So a straighter skirt doesn't really work for that. Now, it was fine when I was younger and I was working all the time. I was standing on my feet. I barely sat down at all, so that was fine. But now that I'm at home most of the time, I find like if I'm in my sewing room or watching television or working on my knitting or whatever, I'm very often sitting and I'm sitting cross-legged. So that doesn't really work for with a straighter skirt. So in addition to that very practical aspect of the skirt situation, although I see a lot of skirts online, I see a lot of skirts that look the same. I see a lot of like dirndl type skirts. I see a lot of plain A-line skirts, and I see like a lot of the gathered tier skirts that you see all over the place these days. And so I guess I felt sort of not very interested in them. And then I realized after, you know, we were talking about this a couple weeks ago, that the truth is I just don't ever really look at skirts because I've sort of like just discounted them. So let's get down to business. I did a little searching online and I came up with some inspiration for some skirts that I think are really interesting and also really wearable. So here we go. We'll start with a couple of really pretty basic shapes that I saw over at the Crystal Larson website. Like this one looks like a pretty straightforward A-line type skirt. It just has some really cool like soutache type decorations on it. So that's a really good way to work in a little more interest into a really basic pattern. Same thing with this one. This one is just a simple gathered waist skirt, but has some sort of, I don't know if it's embroidery or applique or whatever. It doesn't really matter. That's the general idea, just to add a little interest to it. I also saw this one over at Crystal Larson, which is a really simple, again, pretty straightforward A-line skirt with one ruffle around the bottom. I felt like this could work really well for a more basic skirt because I could layer it underneath like a longer type tunic kind of top. Sort of the way she's done here in this picture. And then I've also got, also from Crystal Larson, this almost sort of cargo looking skirt with the big patch pockets. It's got just a plain elastic waist, but it does have this really cool like drawstring at the bottom that I thought was interesting. And that little slit would also adds a little interest. All right, and then I found some others. this sort of barrel shape, I guess it is, or tulip shape. I really love this. I like that the fullness is not so much at the waist, that it's a little bit further down, and it looks like it might come in a little bit at the bottom. It looks also like there's some sort of a detail there. Anyways, I do really like this, and I like the way she has it styled here. I could totally wear that. And then this one, which again looks like a pretty straightforward skirt, it's just got a lot of interest in the fabric choices. I have a couple of skirts here that I thought were, like, again, really basic plain sort of skirts, but I do really like the way they're styled here with these like slightly oversized boxy tops. This second one here has like a nice little feminine detail of lace around the bottom, and I think this one might actually be, oh no, I thought that one was tiered, but it's not. So those are just pretty basic shaped skirts. This one here is, it looks like a pretty straight skirt, although it does have like a little bit of a curve, so it comes in a little bit at the bottom. I looked at, I don't have another picture of it, but I did look at the back of this, and it's got like a drawstring just at the back, so it's got a little more fullness in the back than it does in the front. This one here from Daniela Gregus looks like it's in a sort of a crinkle fabric of some sort. Again, I really like the way she has this styled with sort of a, instead of a really boxy floaty top, this one is still kind of a square cut, but it's a little closer fitting and it's sort of cropped. I really like this with a fuller skirt. This one here is like a pleated skirt, which I don't really like that like knife pleat skirt where the pleats go all the way around, but I do really like the way they have this styled with a boxy shirt. I don't know if you can see in this one, but it does have like a little bit of a drawstring at the side. So I do think that's a really cool way to wear a skirt. And then this one is very similar to the red one we just looked at, but I do like this also with like an oversized like drapier kind of shirt. Although long sleeves are going to be a problem for me moving into summer, but in the fall that would be really cool. Here's another picture of somebody wearing like just a really basic like sort of A-line gather waist skirt, but this time with a more masculine looking, or maybe just less feminine looking, oversized sort of square cut top. I also like that this has like a collar. I thought that was an interesting way to wear just like a plain skirt. Again, this is another one with more of a little bit like a cropped sort of boxy top. And again, the skirt is just really simple. This one here is probably my favorite. It definitely does come in a little bit at the waist. Sorry, at the hem. But it's an elastic waist, just a pull-on skirt, and I really love it with this sort of cropped like top with a little gathering across the bottom. I love the way that looks as an outfit. Here's another one of a fuller skirt with just like a button-down shirt. This one is a little bit more fitted. This skirt here is a gather waist A-line skirt, and it does have some big pockets on the side. I don't know if you can see them in this picture, but I do love it with, again, with this like sort of drawstring waist. This one has like a little bit of a drop shoulder, but I don't think that there's really a sleeve there. I really like that. And I really like this, the idea of making a skirt with a matching top. This is just a plain A-line elastic waist skirt, like sort of above the ankle with a cropped, more fitted top. And I really love that idea of wearing the matching set. This is just another picture of that drawstring top I just showed you. I think this is just, you can sort of see the sleeve a little bit better in this one. And then this one here is another sort of cargo-y kind of skirt with like a gather waist. I don't know if you guys will remember, what was that skirt I made last summer? It was the McCall skirt. It reminds me a lot of this. And I like that, again, it has like a matching top, which is kind of a cool, I mean, for somebody like me who doesn't have anything that matches, I like that idea. It feels a little different to me. And then here is another sort of straight, but definitely like a bubble shape with a longer tank top tunic. And I love this fabric. I like the idea of using a really funky fabric for that. This one is another sort of matching outfit, but I actually really like the idea of using two fabrics in the same sort of colors and using one for the top and one for the skirt. Again, this is a pretty plain, simple, like elastic waist skirt, with a boxier little top. This next one is more of a maxi skirt. It does have like an asymmetric, you can't really tell that it's asymmetric in this picture, but that slit up the front is a bit asymmetric, and I really like that. I feel like that adds a little bit of interest. And then this last one here is another pretty basic skirt. It's got like a straight flat yoke at the top and a fuller skirt at the bottom. But again, she's wearing it with like a more cropped, slightly boxy little top, and I really like the way that that looks. Okay, so then I went around the internet and I thought, okay, so let's look for some patterns that I could use for different types of skirts, something with a little variety or interest. The pictures we looked at were mostly the skirts themselves were all pretty basic shapes, plain A-lines, slightly barrel-shaped, some like the drop yoke, but mostly pretty basic style. So I wasn't necessarily looking for those styles. I know that those are available in abundance. I was looking around to see if there are any other skirt patterns that I would be really interested in making based on the style of them and whatnot. The first one I came up with was this one. I think it's called the Lantern Skirt. It's from Fashion and Harmony. It is a bias cut, and it's also like a lantern-y kind of shape. I have been looking at this pattern for ages and ages. I obviously haven't purchased it, but I am really interested in that. I think it's a really cool looking skirt. Unfortunately, I think this one is only available in paper, but for reference, you guys, I'll post links to all the patterns in the notes below. Okay, and then for a zero waist or low waist option, I had two from Liz Heywood. This one, the Claire skirt, which has a really cool like side drape. And then this one from Liz Heywood also. This one's called the Bryer. And it does have like a slight like sort of bubble shape. So like one of those skirts that comes in a little bit at the bottom. It just has an interesting shape, and I thought that could be a really fun skirt to make. This one here from Trend Patterns is pretty, again, it's pretty basic. It's almost like an A-line, but it does have like a little inset in the front to give it that sort of handkerchief hem in the front, and I thought that was really cool. There's a picture of it from the back. It's just an elastic waist. This one here is from a company called Fortive, F-O-R-T-I-V. This is called the Calyx skirt, and actually, again, this is pretty simple, and it's also really like basically a straight skirt. It just has some gathered panels on the sides. I love the way that they have done the mixing with these plaids though, and that is definitely something I would do. This one is a skirt I've talked about before. This one is the Specks and Keeping's April skirt. I do have this pattern, and I should really get making it because I think that this could be a really good, especially if you wanted to do something in like a really fun fabric, like maybe a light, airy, like cotton lawn in a big print or something. That could be really fun. Same thing with this one, which is the gypsum skirt from So Liberated. I've had the skirt for ages and ages, and I've never made it. So I think that could be also a really good option. Again, has really interesting pockets. Aside from that, it's pretty basic. This one here is from a company called the Curated Curvy, and it's called the Jamison skirt. And to me, this has like the real flavor of like a Crystal Larson type skirt. I thought this could be really cool to do in a double layer. This is just a single layer, but if you cut another piece the same size and put it underneath, you could have like contrasting colors between the bottom layer and this layer with the big ruffle on it. I love that. I think that looks really cool. I'll link this below, but you can see on her website, she has like a ton of pictures of other people wearing this too. This one is sort of more minimalist, almost utilitarian looking. This is also from, this one is from an Etsy shop called Toto shop. And it's just called the Midi skirt. Again, elastic waist. Now the sort of like gathering at the bottom here is achieved with elastic at the bottom as well. I think that's really cool. I actually really love that. This next one is from Vanessa Hansen. Again, it's an elastic waist skirt, and it's just like a plain, like pretty straightforward A-line skirt, except that the gathers on this one are asymmetrical and there's a big slit up the front. So plenty of interest there. Naturally, you guys, I'm sure many of you have seen this one. This is the Ziggy skirt from Dhurata Davies. I think based on the line drawings, the panels in this give you plenty of options for playing around with prints or stripes or anything like that. This next one is another sort of a take on a cargo skirt. This is from Pauline Alice, and it's called the Nue skirt. It has big patch pockets on the sides. It also has like some sort of a drawstring kind of waist gathered thing at the waist. And it also has like side panels that are gathered at the bottom. So that is probably a little more gathering than I'm willing to go for. But I do think it's a really cool skirt and it's very interesting. Of course, many of you have recommended the Ayla skirt from Style Arc. This is seriously right up my alley, and I will probably just buy this pattern because I've seen many pictures of this and I love it, and it is really, I feel like this is something I would just wear the heck out of. Same thing with this next one. This is from the assembly line and it is called the Elastic Waist Maxi skirt. Now, I will say that the assembly line also has several other skirt patterns that I thought were really cool. Unfortunately, the photographs are all in black fabric, so you can't really see any of the details, so I didn't include them here. But definitely, if you haven't already, check out the assembly line skirt patterns because they had some really good ones. Again, some pretty basic shapes that you could do some different things with. And this last one here is the Henrietta. This is from Spaghetti Western Sewing. I saw this a few weeks ago when one of the ladies over on the Discord chat was talking about the Juno shirt. When I went to check that out, I saw this skirt and I really fell in love with it. I did buy this pattern and I already have it printed out and I'm about ready to get working on that sometime soon. So that is it for my inspiration and my pattern suggestions. I'm really curious to know if any of you guys have like a favorite skirt pattern or just a skirt pattern you really like, something you've used multiple times, something you've seen that you think is different, any of those things, any skirt suggestions, I would be really grateful to have. You can just leave those for me in the comments below. And don't forget, if you want to join the chat over on Discord, you can do that by signing up at my Ko-Fi for $2 a month, and I will send you a link to the chat. And I think that is it for me this week. I am gonna go get sewing on some skirts. I appreciate all of your input of the last few weeks with my questions about my wardrobe. You have really, really inspired me to make some skirts, which is not something I've been excited about for a really long time. So I really appreciate that, and hopefully I'll have something to show for it next week. Until then, I wish you all happy sewing.